everybody, it's Shady here again, and today I'm going to be doing something very unique, and that's going to be showing my Resident Evil collection. That's why, as you can see, the camera's pointing towards my floor, so so you have maximum viewing angle or whatever to show the games. So I'm going to actually start off things straight away with Resident Evil 1. See, this is the Platinum Hits version, not the original. Because basically when when a game got released on PlayStation and sold over 1 million copies, I believe it was, then they would release a platinum version, which basically, I'll say basically less, it's very difficult, which means that it got a re-release at half the price, which is kind of cool when you think about it. They don't really do anything like that anymore. I remember you did have I think it was Xbox Classics, and then there was also Nintendo Selects, but those seem to be things of the past now, really. I want to say that the PS3 generation was the last time they actually had the PlayStation Platinums. I think they were called Select or something like that in other regions. But yeah, now to actually, sorry about the knock there, but now to actually talk about the game. This is obviously the original game in the series, The Godfather of Survival Horror, if you will. Released in 1995, and one thing about this original version is that there's no auto aiming, which is kind of crazy, so it makes it a little bit more challenging and a bit more difficult, really. So yeah, it's a bit difficult to go back to this version. What I would personally suggest though is the next one, which is the Director's Cut. As you can see, this also includes a demo for Resident Evil 2, and if you look at the back here, you actually get some kind of cool screenshots, and obviously, as it says there, this is the best PlayStation game overall. I'm going to quickly close this curtain to try to reduce the glare anyway. I was trying to use it for lighting, but obviously the sun is right on me, so it just makes the glare insane. But yeah, you can see things a little bit better now. Obviously, as you can see, another cool thing about this, I'll open it here. It does in fact come with the demo for Resident Evil 1, and there's the Director's Cut itself. Essentially, the Director's Cut really just added like a few new modes and stuff. First of all, it did add the actual like auto aiming, or the ability to aim. I think it's something you can turn on and off as well. And it added the arranged mode, I believe it was, which essentially put items in different locations, and it was just a mode for people who played the game a lot. Also, this demo, this is not the 1.5 demo. I think that was only for the Japanese version. Obviously, if you don't know Resident Evil 2, there was an original version, but we'll get to that in a second anyway. But yeah, this has, in the demo, you basically get to play as Leon when I think it's only Leon, you don't get to play as Claire, but it's basically when he's just in the police station, and you get to get all the way up to the parking lot or something like that, and then it ends. It's a cool little demo anyway. Demo's always cool. The next game, if you can believe it, this is going to be really difficult. Oh yeah, one thing before talking about the next game, there was also the DualShock version, but we didn't actually get that over here. That one basically changed the music, and it had a really awful soundtrack. But obviously it does have the DualShock support. I don't think, yeah, this one still doesn't have analog support either, so that's the main kind of innovation with that one. But obviously next, there's Resident Evil 2 with my dirty looking cover. Yeah, Resident Evil 2 is a bloody classic. That's all I need to say about that game, or this game rather. With this game, you get to play as either Leon or Claire, but unlike the first game, obviously you could play as Chris and Jill in the first game. This game, you have a disc per character, which is cool, because there's obviously so much more game and cutscenes and everything that you actually had to have one per character, which is kind of cool. And another thing with this game is there was an original version, what people dubbed Resident Evil 1.5, where you, instead of Claire, you had Elsa Walker, you still had Leon. But it got like pretty far into development. Then Mikami was basically like Shinji Mikami, that is, he was basically like this is rubbish. We're gonna have to redo this, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. And I don't think they would do anything like that anymore. Saying that, I'm sure they would have had more of a unified vision. I believe it was Hideki Kamiya, who was the director for this one, and Mikami was just overseeing things, so he wasn't happy and then they had to retool things. But yeah, it's an absolute classic. Everything a sequel should be, in my opinion, where it just kind of builds upon everything in the first game and just improves it really. Obviously we get to visit more we get to see the streets of Raccoon City, which is cool. We can actually see everything that was involved in that, and then we get to go in the police station and solve some really cool puzzles. Yeah, it's a really great game. Next up is one I really love, one of my personal favorites, and that's Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. So as you see, Nemesis is the dude on the front there who's hunting Jill down, because after the events of the first game, Chris and Jill basically go their own separate ways. I think Chris is trying to investigate whatever's happened with the Umbrella Corporation, and I think he goes to Spain or something, I can't remember. And then Jill is still stuck in Raccoon City and is actually gonna try to escape. And this is originally, I think this is actually called Last Escape in other places, but for us it's just called Nemesis. So another interesting thing about this game, obviously we have Jill and probably her most iconic costume and style. But what's really interesting about this game is that it was originally meant to be just called Last Escape, and it was meant to be like some kind of side game, but because they had an agreement with Sony where it had to be a numbered game, they basically call it Resident Evil 3. So a lot of people kind of consider this more of a expansion, even though I would say it's a whole game on its own. There is enough content there to really call it that. But yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, that's the end of the PS1 games. I don't actually have another game on there, which was Resident Evil Survivor, which is like a first-person light gun game without light gun support, which is weird, isn't it? But one interesting thing there is that these games eventually did get ports. So we have the Dreamcast version of Resident Evil 2, which is a really awesome version. This is basically, it's still on 2 discs, and the Dreamcast you have to open them like that, which is kind of cool. And this one actually does have the cover in it, which is cool. But what's interesting about this is it's essentially just like the PC port, really. It does add some really cool features. Firstly, you get I think it's called the Nightmare mode, which was just exclusive to this version, I believe, where it's like an even more difficult version of the game. And I believe it also might have added a costume or 2 as well. But yeah, it's a really cool version. Yeah, it's one of the ones I like to play anyway. It also does have VGA support, I believe, as you can see on the back there. Yeah, which means it's a higher resolution, basically, than that original PlayStation version. And obviously, they didn't only do that, but then they obviously ported over 3 as well, which is a great version. Another really cool thing about these games, or an interesting thing rather, is that these Dreamcast versions kind of command a pretty high price for some reason. I don't know why. I had to hunt for this one for ages. I think I eventually got it for like 35 or 40 or something, which was like insane, which is basically probably the price it launched at, which is crazy, isn't it? Yeah, so the disc is actually on that side. Yeah, this version is really cool. It's kind of the definitive version in a way, because you have all these extra costumes. And one interesting thing about this game is the boutique in Resident Evil 3 is just pointless, really, because you can select your costume before you start the game. So you get all the costumes in previous versions, plus like another 2 or 3, I think it is. But yeah, it's a great version of the game. Again, like I said, it's just a PC version. And there was that whole debacle with Resident Evil 3, the naming thing, and that's because originally Code Veronica on the Dreamcast, this was originally meant to be Resident Evil 3, and is, I guess, technically Resident Evil 4, which is weird. But yeah, this is another great one. In this game, we get to play as Claire again, and Chris. Basically what's happened is that Claire is on the trail for her brother because he's gone missing. Because obviously in Resident Evil 2, she was originally searching for him, and this is where she's led to from her discoveries. And basically She is on an island, I believe it is, in a prison because she gets caught while trying to research for her brother. And then what's really cool is we start off on in this prison, and we actually have to escape. There's this really cool thing with the we have this lighter early on, and there's like really cool lighting effects for the time. Also, what's really cool is that this is the first one to have like fully 3D backgrounds and everything, which is great. And yeah, it's just a really cool game worth playing. It's kind of, it's weird because this has kind of become like the forgotten Resident Evil game now, because I don't think it's getting a remake. They've just decided that Code Veronica doesn't exist or something, which is funny. But yeah, it's a great version, great game. There is actually an enhanced version as well, which came later to the PlayStation 2, Code Veronica X. This actually did, it did come to the Dreamcast as well, only in Japan if I'm correct. So you can get this enhanced version. So essentially this adds, as you can see on the back, so you have the, I think it was, maybe it doesn't say on the back, but yeah, you get the, yeah, there we go. There's the first person hidden game mode, the battle mode it is. Also, famously, this also changes the hair on Steve, who's one of the characters, because I think they literally just ripped off Leonardo DiCaprio, and because they were worried about some kind of legal troubles, they decided to change his hair. So in the original one, he has like these curtains, and then they give him like longer hair or something instead. Basically give him like a fringe, I think it is, or something, which is really funny. But yeah, also, as you can see, this has the demo for Devil May Cry, which, if you don't know, was another attempt at doing Resident Evil 4, or was one of the early prototypes of Resident Evil 4, which eventually became something. This, I think, basically you get to fight up to Phantom or something, so you get to do like the first mission or two or something. But yeah, this is a great version of the game. Also, another cool touch is you can see that little zombie in her eyes, which is cool. But yeah, Code Veronica is a really great game, definitely worth playing. This might not be the best way to play it. There is another version that released later, a HD version, which was released for PS3 and good old 360 actually. Before we get into the next PS2 game, I have to talk about a couple other ones first. So you got this game, Resident Evil 0, which was on the Dreamcast, and a Dreamcast exclusive for like a decade. So this is basically set just before the events of Resident Evil 1. And this explains Rebecca, what happened to her team, Alpha Team basically. So it starts off on a train, and we have to eventually meet up with this prisoner who's escaped called Billy. And then what's really cool about this game is that we have to do this kind of cool co-op stuff. So you actually get to control both characters and switch between them on the fly, which is insane. And what's even crazier is this game was originally going to be on the N64, but was cancelled. And there is early footage of the game running on the N64. I don't know how that partner switching mechanic would have worked. It probably just wouldn't have on an N64. Maybe it would have, who knows. But it's a really cool looking version of the game anyway. But this is a great one. Still holds up really well. Again, probably go for the HD version though. But yeah, it's a really awesome game. And another thing, in GameCube, this is on 2 discs, which is interesting. We've got Rebecca there, and we have Billy there. One thing I really like about this game though, is just that that early section on the train that's just so unique and something we haven't seen before. There's another really cool thing. Remember, there's a bit in this goes back to the fixed camera angles again though, on like Code Veronica. But there's a really cool bit where you can see like water moving, and even though it's like an animation that's just playing, it just looked really cool when you're on the train, because there's a great kind of feeling of momentum on there, which is cool. But yeah, Code Veronica is a great one. Obviously, then there's another game, a little game called Resident Evil Remake, or Remake as you will, or just Resident Evil. Yeah, this is just basically the first game perfected pretty much. It's like they took everything they learned from those previous games and just applied it to this. It's like they used the original game as a blueprint, if you will, or like to set the groundwork, and then they built on top of it. Kamiya famously, not Kamiya, Shinji Mikami famously said the game is 70% different. Again, like the original, we get to play as both Chris and Jill, and we get to explore the mansion and figure out the events. Again, this is another one that's a 2-discer. Get to see the dog, and we get to see a zombie there. Also, one thing I really love is that one of the things they added, which was the whole thing with Lisa Trevor, who's like essentially like Sadako or something, which is cool. It's like, because obviously Resident Evil's always been very much a Japanese take on like Western horror, so it was kind of cool to see more of a like a all Japanese inspired kind of design in the game, which is cool. But yeah, this is a legit classic one you have to play. Another thing they did, which is kind of awesome, is they did re-releases of the older games as well, just to have, I guess, all of them released on one platform. So you got Resident Evil 2, which has an awesome version as well. This is one of my preferred versions. This is basically the one I always go to. Let's remove that, you don't want to see that. Yeah, again, this is great because this one is on a single disc. There is also another version of this game, which I don't own, which is the N64 version. I just don't have an N64 yet, and plus that version is like insanely expensive. I mean, saying that, this one just cost a pretty penny. What's weird is these Dreamcast versions of these ones like are just the most expensive ones for some reason. But obviously, as you can guess, they did also release Resident Evil 3 as well, which is great. As you can see in the back, pretty cool. Got pretty much the same thing. We've got a picture of Jill there, near enough uniform between all three versions. Cool booklet. Awesome blue disc as well, which is cool. But yeah, there's another really cool version of the game. Again, this is my preferred version to play, just because it's the highest resolution version. What is interesting though with these two versions is you don't have all the extras you did in the Dreamcast versions, but they're basically just essentially just ported PlayStation versions, really. Resident Evil 2 is basically the DualShock edition of that, and that's just the standard version, but obviously they're high resolution, so it's quite nice. And obviously, if they release those, you know, they had to release Code Veronica X as well, which is great. This was actually the most expensive out of all of them that I had to buy. I'm pretty sure it still commands a pretty high price. But yeah, again, this is interesting because this is 2 discs as well, which is weird. The original Dreamcast version was 2 discs as well. But yeah, that's interesting. But I don't know why that is at all. I guess just because it demands more space or something. But yeah, great games. Just definitely worth a try. There was also one other game. This was kind of the big one on the old Dreamcast, and that was the release of Resident Evil 4. If you don't know, this game was originally an exclusive to the Dreamcast, and yeah, no, the Dreamcast. Oh my god, I said it again. I said that in my video about the horror games to play in October, but I mean the GameCube. Yeah, so there was a deal between Nintendo and Capcom to have 5 games referred to as the Capcom 5, and this is one of them. I believe it was this, Killer 7, Beautiful Joe, Piano 3, and Lost Kingdom or something, I think it was called, Forbidden Kingdom. Yeah, basically one got cancelled, which is Forbidden Kingdom, and basically Piano 3 was the only one that ended up being an exclusive. Everything else got ported to PlayStation. But yeah, this is a great game. You know, re-ramps the game. We get to play it as it's more of an action horror game as opposed to just a straight up survival horror. There's some people who don't like that so much, but I mean, I love it. It's one of my favorite games. This is one of the games I've always played and will always buy a version of if it's available on something. Yeah, as you can see, it's on 2 discs as well. This game still holds up really well in terms of the gameplay and the actual visuals as well. It's like it's shocking really, because no other shooters at the time played that great really, but this one, it still is really good. Awesome game. And that moves me back onto the PS2, because we actually did get a port of Resident Evil 4 a year later because it underperformed. I'm assuming how these, because I'm guessing there's probably some kind of parameters with these exclusivity deals, and the game didn't reach so many sales, so I'm guessing it meant that had to be ported to PlayStation. People also cite the porting of this game as the reason why Shinji Mikami left Capcom as well. I don't know if that's true or not. I doubt that. I think he was just disgruntled because they just want to keep, you know, they weren't allowing them to do these original games because I guess they underperformed or whatever, and they just wanted them to do Resident Evil games. So that's why Platinum Games was formed. So it's a really interesting footnote in the release of this game. But yeah, as you can see, this is the cool steelbook version. This version basically adds Simon Ada, and I think it was the new weapon, that one there. You can see it's like the Plaga Destroyer. But yeah, in this game, obviously, we have to save the person sort of with good old Leon. This one also comes with this little mini kind of strategy guide. So it's basically like just a strategy guide for like the first few chapters, basically. Also, you get to see some other releases from Capcom. Really cool thing. Yeah, also we're getting the remake, which is cool. I really love that blood handprint thing though. This is one of probably my favourite steelbooks, I think. But yeah, and then moving on, after all those versions, there was, in fact, if you remember, Nintendo released another system called the Nintendo Wii. So there was ports of Resident Evil, the first one, the archive, and also Zero got a port as well, which is cool. As you can see, these ones actually allow you to play with like a single Wii remote as well, which is kind of crazy. Obviously you can play with the nunchuck or even the GameCube control, so you can play them like the way they originally were. And obviously this had to get a port as well. I believe this one launched alongside, or if not, came out within in the first year of the Wii, and it's basically like the definitive version. Obviously it's not in HD, but you get those awesome kind of point controls. Another weird thing is this actually does support the GameCube controller, so I think you just literally go into settings or pause the game, plug in a GameCube controller into your Wii, and it just works like normal. But for some reason they didn't have it on the back there. I don't know why. I guess because maybe it was just because it was an earlier one or something. But yeah, really cool version of the game. One of the ones I would definitely suggest getting. You do also have the HD versions as well. But yeah, it's a great one anyway. Awesome game, one of my favourites. Cannot wait for that remake. Also, a couple other games. Got the Umbrella Chronicle, which is essentially just a railgun shooter. We basically just go over the like the first few games. So we go over 0, Remake, and 3. For some reason they didn't do 2 or Code Veronica, but obviously there's a reason why. I explained it in an earlier video, as you know already. But the there's also a couple of really cool sections as well, like little added bits. So we get to see Wesker actually escaping the mansion, which is awesome. And then there's a section with Chris and Joel in the BSAA, because obviously this was released around the time of the build-up to Resident Evil 5, I believe it was. So it's kind of like a pseudo prequel to that game in a way. But yeah, awesome little game. Yeah, visuals wise it's not the best looking game, but then they did improve that massively with this one, Darkside Chronicles, which is actually a legit great game. One of my favourite side games, if you will. This game, we get to do the events of 2 and Code Veronica finally, and we even get to play as Krauser and Leon in Operation Javier, I think it was called, which is just basically like a little kind of prequel to 4, if you will, just to show, you know, their little kind of partnership before the events of 4. Obviously Krauser mentions that they used to work together or something. But yeah, those are all the Wii games. Cool little collection there. Now let's move on to another interesting system. One that I think you guys should be familiar with. Which is the Nintendo DS, an awesome little handheld from back in the day. But yeah, as a 10-year anniversary thing, they actually released Resident Evil Deadly Silence. I did show this in a previous video again, but yeah, this is basically like the definitive version of that first game. Visuals wise, it's not as good, because I think it was, because it's designed for a handheld, the like the backgrounds and stuff aren't quite as detailed, but and they're a bit more kind of vibrant looking, but I think that's just because it was designed to be viewable on that smaller screen. Yeah, this is essentially like a super version of that original game that had the quick turn from like Resident Evil 3 and beyond, and they basically make the knife a separate item like in Resident Evil 4, which is cool. They also added this whole like rebirth mode, which utilizes the old touchscreen and mic and things like that from the DS, which is cool, and makes it a really like cool and interesting port. Again, this one is slightly higher in price because it's it's a port of a PS1 game on the DS, which is a bit interesting. I don't know how many people were really that interested with this back in the day, but yeah, I'm guessing that's why we never got like 2 and 3 ports. But yeah, it's still really cool, definitely worth getting. Also, as you can see on the back there, this actually allowed for fucking multiplayer, which is insane. So you have this like multiplayer deathmatch mode in a Resident Evil game, which is so funny to me. But yeah, that's a cool one. And then moving on to the handhelds again, we actually do have something else. Resident Evil The Mercenaries 3D. So I'm pretty sure this was like near enough a launch title or early on title for the 3DS. I think this was essentially like kind of a Tectonomy type thing because they were developing another Resident Evil game, and I think they just slapped this one together just to have something at launch and to just showcase the visuals of the 3DS. This is basically this is an interesting one because it takes some of the levels from 4 and 5 versions of the Mercenaries, and then adds these extra little modes, like you have even boss fights and a few different variations. It doesn't play quite like the original Mercenaries. Still a cool little game. Also, this one has a couple of really interesting things. One, you can't bloody play as Leon, which is crazy to me, but you do get to play as Jill with her Resident Evil 3 costume, which is cool. Can't complain too much then. And also, this had a demo for the first Revelations as well, which is awesome. Yeah, and that was kind of the main reason anyone bought this, really, was to play that game. I think is it there? I don't know if it says it anywhere. Does it even say it anywhere? It's so weird. But yeah, this used MT Frame Rate Mobile, which is cool, or mobile. But yeah, the Revelations demo, you basically just get to play as Jill, and you get to go down like a couple of little corridors, and then yeah, you either get killed by a couple of enemies or they kill you, and that's it really. It was just to sort of showcase that game a little bit. And now we've got another one, Resident Evil Revelations. Really awesome game. This was originally released for 3DS. This is a pretty awesome version of this game. This essentially tried to take elements from 5 and like 4 and fuse them together. It tried to kind of make Resident Evil into like more of a classic survival horror type of game in a way. What's really interesting about this is that you have essentially two kind of, it's episodic basically. So you have these moments on the Queen Zenobia with Jill, where you're exploring and doing kind of more classic Resident Evil stuff, and then you have these missions in between where you play as Chris and some other characters, where it's just like basically just killing tons of enemies, which is kind of cool. Yeah, this version is, ignore that, don't know why that's in there, but yeah, this was like a special edition version. Well, I've got this little poster. I'm not even sure if I'm going to show this properly. But yeah, basically, it's a really cool one. But yeah, we have Jill on this side, and then we have the Veltros symbol, who are the villains, on the back, which is kind of cool. And also, yeah, this was the other version. So basically, for some reason, yeah, they gave this kind of cool extra cover there. When I paired with the game, basically this was like a little bonus essentially. So you got obviously an extra cover with the actual game in it, and this shiny little cool thing there where you get to see the eye. Cool game. Also, what I love is this introduced raid mode, which is one of my favorite modes in Resident Evil, where you get to basically unlike Mercenaries where it's just like, you know, you have a timer and you've got to kill as many enemies. This one is get from point A to point B, taking out enemies, and there's actually no timer, so it's really cool. And also that it does allow for co-op as well. I don't think it says it anywhere. I think it does say that actually on this one, because that's the original cover and this is just the extra cover. Yeah, it's a new term I've invented. Next up, we'll go over some of the games I have on the 360. First of all, we'll talk about Resident Evil 5, the original version. In this game, Chris is back. We get to play Sheva. We're in Africa, and it's essentially just a co-op take on Resident Evil 4 really. It's a bit shorter, but it's a lot of fun. One of my favourite co-op games to play. Playing it on your own is fine, but like it's meant to be played with another person, because unfortunately Sheva's AR is not the greatest. It's not terrible, but like you'll give her a weapon, she'll just waste all your ammo, and she'll immediately heal you as soon as you get one scratch on you, and it's annoying. But yeah, definitely play it on another person. Yeah, it's a really awesome game, by the way. One of my favourites, in fact. Yeah, definitely give it a go. I think this has one of my favourite versions of the Mercenaries as well, which is like where I got the majority of my playtime. This isn't actually the original platform I played it on. I did actually play it on the PS3 version, this is the gold edition. I did originally have the standard version, and then I got the DLC for the gold edition. But then when Sony released the Move Controller, this was one of the games that launched alongside it. So as you can see, it has the Move Controller. So basically it allows you to play this game like Resident Evil 4 Wii edition. So as soon as that came out, I got this alongside my PlayStation Move. But yeah, this is awesome. Basically, we have a couple of new things as well. It was basically Mercenaries Reunion, I think it was called, or something, where we got a few new characters like Barry and Rebecca, for example. And then there was the Lost in Nightmares, which was like a cool kind of nod to classic Resident Evil, where we play as Chris and Jill as they're exploring the Spencer Mansion, or one of the Spencer Mansions, trying to find Wesker. And then there's also Desperate Escape, which was set during the ending of the first game, where we get to play as Josh and Jill as they're escaping from the facility, wherever it was. But yeah, great game. Obviously, you want to pick up the gold edition. There is a better version of that game to pick up. But yeah, the next game we're going to talk about is one I know everyone bloody loves, and that's Resident Evil 6. This is my Steelbook version of the game, because basically when you pre-order it, you got Steelbook, and there was also a t-shirt, but unfortunately that t-shirt got like completely destroyed. So this is one cool thing where you have like the zombie, like with the whole city gone. This is a really interesting game. Also in the inside, one interesting thing, you got Leon and you got our boy Chris as well, face knocking against each other. Yeah, in this game it's a really bloody weird one. For some reason they decided to try to make Resident Evil appeal to like the Call of Duty crowd for some reason. So they decided to kind of like you have all these like ridiculously crazy action set pieces, and for some reason there's mental amounts of quick time events in the original release anyway. And you have like a lot of game in this though. You got like 3 campaigns. You get to play as Leon and Helena, Chris and Pierce, and then there's also Sheva and Jake. But then also you unlock the Ada campaign as well, so there's a ton of content now. Also, again, this version of Mercenaries is definitely my favourite. Yeah, I think it's a really odd game, because I can definitely understand why people don't like it, because as a Resident Evil game, it's not there at all. It's not really a horror game or anything. But just as a fun little third-person shooter, it is a lot of fun, because the combat's actually kind of quite deep in this game. You get to actually play, like, you get all these kind of crazy moves and stuff. You get to actually, like, do some melee stuff, and you have the stamina gauge, which lets you do some kind of cool, unique moves. So I think there is definitely fun to be had in this game. Not this version though, I wouldn't suggest this version. Then there's another game I want to talk about before moving on. Again, on the 360, this is the 360 version of Revelations 2. In this game, we finally get to play as Claire again, and Moira, who's Barry's daughter, and also Barry's back as well, with the Natalia, I think that girl is. Yeah, this one is, so obviously originally this was released episodically, because it was this kind of, I think it was after the release of the Telltale games, there was this like little trend where everyone was releasing episodic games, so this was one of them. I originally got it on, obviously playing on PS4 originally episodically, but then I saw this one cheap, so I was like, I may as well pick it up. But yeah, it still runs alright. It's still a version of the game that's playable, so this is one of those like interesting cross-gen games that you get out there. Yeah, definitely give that one a go if you want to. Now let's move on to another generation, or one of the first in the next gen. We got the Wii U version of Revelations. So if you don't know, I think it was a year or so later, they did ports of Revelations HD versions of it. So the PS3 360 and the Wii U all got a version of this game. This one's awesome because what I love about this version is it basically lets us do all the like DS style stuff with the gamepad, so you get to have the map and I think it was even the gyro controls and things like that that were available for the DS version, which is cool. So this kind of would call this the best version, really, the one you want to play. Well, you don't necessarily have to have this version if you don't have a Wii U, but definitely get the HD version instead of that 3DS version. The 3DS version though does give you the option to point and shoot in first person, which is awesome, which is kind of a cool thing. And the 3D does definitely add something to it. So if you have like a new 3DS or whatever, maybe give it a go on that. But yeah, awesome game, awesome version. Yeah, I just picked this one up because it was stupid cheap, and you know, anytime I don't need an excuse really to get a Wii U game really, because it's an awesome console. Don't listen to what people say. Okay, next up, we'll show good old PS4. So first of all, I have this Resident Evil 4. This was the Ultimate HD version. So basically, if you don't know, Resident Evil 4, it's basically been ported to everything, obviously. There's been obviously there was the original release, and there was the PS2 version, and then they did like this terrible PC version, and then obviously got a HD version on PS3 and 360. Obviously there's the Wii version as well, and then a few years later they finally want to address the PC version, so they created the Ultimate HD version, it's called, which added these like new textures and the ability to play at 60 frames and stuff, even though I think 60 frames kind of breaks the game because they don't really balance it properly. Like it's fine and normal and easy, but when you play it on professional, it just breaks the fucking AI. It's insane. But yeah, this is essentially just a port of that version, really. It's the Ultimate HD version for PS3 and 360, even though it doesn't have that tagline. But yeah, I don't really need an excuse to buy another version of Resident Evil 4, and that's what this is. And obviously, just includes everything in it, pretty much. As well as that, they also launched this. This was actually the first one to come out of the Resident Evil game. I think this one came out pretty much near the beginning of the next gen. Obviously, Resident Evil 6 didn't really play that well on the original. It on the PS3 and 360 really struggled to hit 30 frames a second, so they just ported it over 60 frames 1080p, so it's just the best version of the game. It's just that simple, and it includes all of the stuff as well. So if you're looking to play this game, pick this one up for PS3 and 360. You know, everything on one disc, can't really complain. And even if it's just to play Mercenaries, it's worth it, I would say. Awesome game. And obviously, yeah, I did get Revelations 2 for the PS4 as well. Even though I do have it, I just thought I wanted a physical copy. Definitely worth having. Really cool game. Next up, before going over the last few games, there's actually something else we need to talk about, which was there was actually some Resident Evil movies, as you can see on the corner of the screen there. That's kind of been ruined, but yeah, Resident Evil Degeneration. Yeah, as you know, they did obviously the live action movies, but then I think it was again like an anniversary type of thing or something, they decided to finally do a Resident Evil movie. This one is starring Leon and Claire, and it's kind of like meant to be a bit of a nod to Resident Evil 2 in a way. What happens is, I think Claire is on the way somewhere in an airport, and then there's like a zombie attack that happens or something, and then there's some terrorist guy who's trying to spread a bioweapon, basically, if you can believe that. You know, basically just the whole Resident Evil kind of plot, you know, some guy's got a virus and we have to stop him. And yeah, this is really cool. It looks pretty amazing as well. That was kind of the whole thing with the movie. I'm not going to say it's like an amazing movie, but it looks really nice. That's one thing, you know, can't really complain about that. And obviously, for some reason, this one's still sealed because I just wanted to have it. This is the original version I got, the old Blu-ray cool version, and then obviously then I picked up that version. And I do also have another, for some reason I have the UMD version. I think mainly I got this because if you don't know, there was originally meant to be a Resident Evil game on PSP, which eventually became Revelations. So this was my way of having a Resident Evil game on the PSP, or having some kind of Resident Evil thing on the PSP. So yeah, really kind of an interesting, cool movie. I'd say it's definitely worth watching, at least once maybe. I don't know if it's on anything. I think you'll have to buy it. And then after that, to coincide with the release of Resident Evil 6, they did another movie, Resident Evil Damnation. This is actually, I think it was released during the same time as 6, I'm pretty sure it was. But yeah, we actually have Ada, Leon again, with his style closer to Resident Evil 6 as well, as you can see. Because obviously in this game, you know, he looks closer to how he does in 2, in this one, 2/4, I guess. And this is meant to be more him in the style of 6. So yeah, in this game, Leon is helping this dude, I think it is, with some virus thing, and there's a lot of zombies, and you have tons of lickers. There is a really cool bit in the end, because this is, I'm not going to, again, it's kind of an average-ish movie really, but you can see some cool funny moments anyway, good action sequences. Obviously because this was the Resident Evil 5-6 era, it was like, you know, heavy action based and everything. But we do get to see a great scene at the end where we have this super tyrant take on like a whole fucking horde of lickers. I think it might be 2 or 3 super tyrants actually. So that's a cool enough scene anyway. Also, as you can see, this has this weird thing where you got like a digital version of the movie, because I think they were desperate to keep up with the digital age, so they decided to add that. I don't know if it has any. Yeah, there it is. So you just got this little random code, and you got to stream it on this random site, which is kind of interesting. And there was a third movie as well, Resident Evil Vendetta. This one, as you can see, you have Chris, who looks weird in this game. You have Leon again with his Resident Evil 6 jacket, I think that is, and you have Rebecca back. Look at that dude there. That's an enemy straight out of Resident Evil 6, isn't it? It looks like that one thing, I can't remember what they're called. I think they're just called, I don't know, BOWs or something. There's that one particular enemy I'm thinking of in Resident Evil 6. But yeah, this is actually a very entertaining movie. This one is just a really dumb, stupid action movie that's worth watching. The first two were cool, and I'd probably give them a watch if you care about Resident Evil enough. But this one I think is definitely worth watching just for how silly it is. There's this amazing fight scene between Chris and the main guy where they're just like fighting with guns and doing all these backflips and crazy stuff. It's just so funny. And as you can see, there's another great scene where Leon is on a motorbike getting chased by the dogs, and he does all this crazy like John Wick style action. It's really, really fun. Definitely give it a go. Okay, now moving on. Not too many games left now. In fact, there's only a couple really. Okay, next up, Resident Evil 7. VR compatible as well. This is maybe one of the greatest Resident Evil games ever made. This just, you know, helped reboot the franchise, brought it back to its roots. Obviously this game is in first person, which is interesting because if you guys aren't aware, originally they wanted to make the first Resident Evil game a first person game, which is really cool. Also, what's great about this, even though it's basically a soft reboot of the franchise, there's a lot of cool nods and stuff as well. There's the whole section with the guys, sewer gators as they call themselves, doing the horror show. I'm not sure, this might have flew over a few people's heads who probably don't know this, but you had the game Sweet Home, which was basically the like inspiration for Resident Evil, or one of the games that helped inspire it. It was also a Capcom game. It was an NES game, basically just an RPG horror game, which is kind of cool for the time. But yeah, in that game, you play as a few, I think it was investigators going inside a mansion to investigate a ghost, so that whole bit is kind of a nod to Sweet Home, which is kind of cool and interesting. Also, what I love is this, obviously the other games take a much more of a, you know, they have zombies and it's very Romero inspired and everything. But this game obviously goes for like this kind of Evil Dead meets Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I like myself like to call this game the Resident Evil Dead myself, because you have an amazing chainsaw and chainsaw battle in it as well. And like Jack Baker is one of my favorite Resident Evil villains now. I think he's so cool. Yeah, awesome game. You can see him there as well. Daddy, as he likes to refer to himself as, or as other people refer to him as. What's interesting is I don't actually have PlayStation VR, so I've never actually got to experience the game like that, unfortunately. Yeah, but next up, another great one, Resident Evil 2 Remake. An amazing game, probably my favourite Resident Evil game, I would say. One of the greatest horror games I've made, I think. Basically, takes that original game and brings it up to the modern age, which is really cool. Which is what I really like about it. Takes the controls from the modern games and applies it to a classic Resident Evil game, pretty much. What I really like about this as well is that there's some couple of cool nods to the original in a way. And basically, we have these. I don't know if you could buy this, I believe, but it was just a pre-order bonus. But basically, you got the Elsa Walker costume from the original game, which is really cool. And also Ada, for example, when we first see her, she was wearing the waistcoat, which was the Mac, or whatever you call it, which was in one of her original concept designs, I believe it was, which is awesome. Yeah, but yeah, this is all the actual games I have. Unfortunately, actually 2, 3, and like 8, I got like digital versions of, unfortunately. Terrible collector I am, right? I am intending to eventually get those versions though. Also, the HD remasters of 1 and 2, or 2, 1 and remake rather, 0 and remake in fact. There was actually an Origins version which was released for PS4 and Xbox One, where you can get both those games together. Also, there is going to be the Resident Evil 8 Gold Edition coming out soon, which is awesome. I'd quite like to add that to my collection eventually. I do also have a few like Resident Evil books and stuff, but I want to save those for another video where I go over like video game related books and stuff, which I think would be more of an interesting video. Or well, would be more interesting to have in a single video anyway, because I've got a lot of like other video game related things that aren't video games, if you will. But yeah, I think the series as a whole has really turned itself around. Obviously, we had that kind of dark period of Resident Evil 6 and some games that people didn't quite like. But yeah, I think it's a great series, and I cannot bloody wait for that remake. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this ridiculously long video of me just showing cases of games. I'm sure someone might find it interesting, who knows. But if you did, if you liked it, then like and subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a great day.